What happens when three runners
from different parts of the country
with different running stories
all get together?
Pure
RunTok
madness.
So listen in as we talk about all things running related.
And some things that maybe aren't running related.
As it's bound to be a good time. This is
RunTok Live.
Yo, what is up? Another episode of RunTok Live. Jake, Carolyn, how you guys doing? It's been a couple weeks, Carolyn. We haven't seen you in a while.
Listen, I was helping the people at the hospital. Like, I feel like that's how can you get sad? Get on to me when I was helping at a hospital.
Listen, Carolyn's already missed one for getting married, and now she's helping people, doing good stuff for the world. Whatever, yeah. Carolyn, you know?
What are y'all doing for the world? Tell me, huh?
I'm just trying to not, die in it, I guess.
Carolyn, we just met, but those sound like excuses to me. So I don't know.
Thanks for being on, Jay. Good podcast. Good night.
Good talking to you guys. We'll see you next time.
Wow.
Oh no! Hey, that's a great introduction to our guest tonight. So I'm very honored to introduce tonight's guest. Jay is the director of the Carmel Marathon, where I actually ran my PR, my marathon PR right now. So, and I'll be going back there again next month, trying to accomplish that feat again. But Jay, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
And Chase failed to provide the full name, but it's Jay Druba, who is
That's right. That's right.
For the listener that doesn't know who Jay is.
Yeah.
The only Jay you need to know. That's all that matters.
That's right.
Our favorite Jay name. Am I right?
Hey.
That's right. It's the easiest.
Definitely.
It's the simplest.
That's the best Jay we've ever had on this podcast for sure.
Calm down, guys. Everybody calm down. Let's take a step back. Reevaluate the conversation we're about to have, okay? Oh, man. Well, Jay, I have tons of questions, but, I'll let Chase lead the way here. But and hopefully by the end of this episode, you can convince me and Carolyn to get up there for Carmel and do the race.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the goal.
Right. So I was explaining to Carolyn earlier about Carmel. Carmel is kind of the, I would call it the premier suburb of Indianapolis, or kind of one of the nicer suburbs of Indianapolis for sure. But what is it about the Carmel Marathon specifically, Jay, that makes it just such an incredible event?
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, I will say, we like to think of Carmel as a city and not a suburb of Indy. It is right outside of Indianapolis, but Carmel has done a really great job as a city of sort of building infrastructure and creating a culture all its own. And it is, to your point, it's hard to describe until you come and visit. From Florida and Texas, I know you guys. We'll have to try to get you up here, but it is a beautiful area, and the city has done, over the last 20 years or so, a fantastic job of really just kind of building the infrastructure, making it super walker, runner, biker friendly, tons of good trails and paths, places to eat, things to do, entertainment. So it's a really, really cool little city, and I think the perfect place for a race like this. So, and so I guess to answer your question about what makes the Carmel Marathon special, it's just that, it's the location. We're very fortunate to have the support of the city. The Monon Trail, which runs all the way from Indianapolis up a little over 30 miles straight north. It used to be a railroad that was converted now to a rail trail. So it's 30 miles in an almost exact straight line. And part of our course runs on that, which is always a favorite of the runners. It's well shaded, well supported. There's always, every day of the week, every day of the year, there are people out there running, walking, cycling. So it's, overall, it's a really active community. Which means that the city and the businesses and the people of Carmel really kind of embrace our event. So that makes everything much easier, as you can imagine. And then we try to do other things to differentiate ourselves as well, which I'm sure we'll get into. But really, I think if I could sum it up, I would say it's the location and the city of Carmel really that makes it special.
For sure, yeah. My apologies to everybody from Carmel for referring to it as a suburb. I don't mean to offend by any means. I'm just one of those lowly guys from southern Indiana. I come up there and get frustrated with all the roundabouts and whatnot.
That's right. We can tell who's from Carmel and who isn't by the way they talk about whether they call it a suburb or and the way they handle the roundabouts. That's a dead giveaway. Carmel is, for those of you who don't know, Carmel is the roundabout capital of the world. So there are more roundabouts in the city of Carmel, I think, than anywhere else on Earth per capita. So there are something like 3, I think, stoplights left in the entire city, and then I don't know, probably a couple hundred roundabouts. They're everywhere. So it's a bit of a running joke. It's become part of the city's identity. We even talked about designing our medals to look sort of like a roundabout. It's that sort of ingrained in the culture. So it's just kind of a funny thing, but it does help. It does make traffic flow more efficiently, and it is safer. So
that would drive my parents nuts because they hate the roundabout. I admittedly have grown on the roundabouts. Every time I go up there, I get a little bit more accustomed to it. I'm just like, you know what, this is kind of nice. I kind of like that.
They take some getting used to, but in the long run, once everybody adapts, they are better. I'm a little biased, but I think they're better.
I did want to point out something else that makes the Carmel Marathon special. I was doing research. It is one of the top Boston Marathon qualifier courses.
That's right.
Can you kind of explain what makes that?
Yeah, so it's a very flat, fast course. We always joke there is really one hill on the entire course, and it's more of a slope than a hill, but it is like at mile 26, and so it's literally like you can see and hear and smell the finish line, and you come up this little Chase knows, right? It's that last little hill before you take that turn into the finish, but otherwise it's a very flat course. It's always been in the spring, so mid-April, ideal conditions, right? Occasionally we'll get some cool weather, but for the most part, last year at the start, it was about 40 degrees. By the late afternoon, it was 60 and sunny. So perfect weather for a marathon. And so we tend to have pretty good weather. It's a fast course. We do give a prize purse to elites for the marathon half and the 10K. And so we tend to draw some elite runners from around the Midwest and from around the country, which makes the pace a little quicker as well. So yeah, we get... And when you look around the Midwest at springtime marathons, there aren't a ton. We're really the only major marathon in Indiana. And so if you're looking to run a marathon in the spring and you live in the Midwest, we're one of the best options, right? It's a fast, especially if you want to qualify for Boston or run a PR. So we actually get people from all over the country. I think right now we're at either 46 or 47 states represented for this year's race coming up next month. And a lot of those people, if you ask them, they're either striving for 50 states, right? 50 marathons in 50 states, or they're coming specifically because they want to qualify for Boston. We have another benefit of being, this year we're the same weekend as Boston, but we're always within a week or two of it. So no one's going to run the Carmel Marathon and Boston. So we kind of like to joke with people like all the fast runners are in Boston, so come run Carmel and win your age group, that kind of thing. But it does lend itself really well to a BQ or a PR, just because usually we have pretty ideal conditions and the course is pretty fast.
Do you have a BQ bell somewhere at the finish line for people to ring?
We will this year, yes.
Nice.
So we haven't in the past, and just to give some background for those who don't know me and don't know the event. So I just acquired the event this year. This will be the 14th year of the Carmel Marathon. It was started by Todd Oliver and Carmel Road Racing Group here locally. That group has moved on and is building other events and doing other awesome things in the running community. And so I'm taking over the event this year. So this will be my first year managing it. So I think by and large, it's been a great event, and we're not making any changes to the course or anything like that. But a few of the things that we are doing are what you just mentioned. We're getting a PR bell and a BQ bell, and just kind of trying to spruce up the post-race party a little bit and some of those kinds of things.
Nice.
So
Carolyn,
have you yourself... What?
No, I was just going to say, there's your BQ race right there.
Listen, which is Chicago doesn't work out, I might be hitting up Carmel. But Jay, have you yourself run any part of the course? Have you done the 10K, half, full?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually have never run this race. So my wife has run the marathon a couple times. She ran the half a couple times, and I always went and supported. And so now, over the past year, I've run the entirety of that course, usually in stretches, just to familiarize myself with it. So very familiar with the course itself. But it's sort of funny. I actually have never run the race itself. I've been there multiple times to support my wife and friends and things like that. And I actually, the year that the Carmel Marathon started in 2011, I was a senior in college, and I was actually the marketing intern for the marathon. So helped with some of the marketing efforts, like the website, and just pushing out communications and things like that. So this is sort of a full circle moment for me, right? My career went a different way, and life went a different way. And then here I am, 13, 14 years later, back involved with the event. So, yeah, looking forward to sort of seeing it from this side for sure.
So are you going to become the first race director that actually races the race this coming year?
There's no way. I think there's too much, maybe I'm too much of a control freak, but the thought of like leaving that start finish line for a few hours to go run the race just makes me break out in hives.
Well,
I think it's funny that you asked though. So Todd Oliver, who started the race and has been the race director up until now, he's leading a pace group for the half marathon for us. So he's going to run it, and he's never run his own race either, right? I mean, there's so many responsibilities of a race director on that day that it's so hard to go actually run. So he's looking forward to actually seeing it from the runner's perspective. And
you know what the easy fix is for that, though, right? I mean, you said you're going to take off for a few hours. Let's call it 2 hours, okay? Just go run that marathon in 2 hours. Be back in a jiffy.
Just make
you
sure
don't know who you're talking to. maybe I could do the 5K in a couple hours or the 10K.
So real quick, Jay, what is your kind of running history? What kind of background do you have with this sport?
Yeah, I started running in, I don't know, second or third grade. My dad was a runner, so I inherited it. I don't think there was any way around it. I remember as a kid, some of my earliest memories were riding my bike alongside my dad while he ran, and then eventually started running, with him a mile or half mile at a time. So it was hooked pretty early on. Ran cross country and track through high school and college. I went to a Division III school here near Indy. Ran for 4 years there, and then got into triathlon actually after school. I think it was a little bit of, maybe being burned out on running, but also I started cross training a little bit more just to ward off some injuries. And I was like, the cycling, the swimming is actually kind of enjoyable. I'm going to go take a stab at this. So did triathlon for a few years, which led me to a job at Ironman. So I worked at Ironman and the Rock and Roll Marathon Series for a few years, which is why I moved down to Tampa. I joke, like, running and endurance sports in general has sort of consumed my life in a way. Like, I never thought growing up, and when you run in high school and even college, you think like this is just something that you do. It's a sport you play, so to speak. And then you get a real job and you grow up. And I guess I never grew up. And I've always been involved in the sport in some way. And I've always loved it and had a soft spot for running in general.
Carolyn, I don't want to call you out or anything, but you're kind of the odd one out here because Jay lived in Tampa, Florida. Chase was born in Orlando, Florida. I live in Florida right now. Come on over, Carolyn.
Body reacts to y'all's humidity. It's not going to work.
Don't act like it's not hot in Texas, though. I mean, come on.
Oh my God. It was 80 degrees today. 60% humidity. I went to the treadmill today and my gym AC was out. So why did I run on the treadmill? Why?
I have no idea.
Never go treadmill.
Never go treadmill. That's right.
I hate the treadmill. I avoid it at all costs.
Oh.
Do you have any big running company or brands that are part of the sponsor team for Carmel?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've made a concerted effort this year to kind of rein in our partners and our sponsorships geographically and try to work with more local companies. So, I intentionally have had zero conversations with with shoe brands or any of the national running chains. We have a really strong relationship with Athletic Annex, which is a local running store. They've got a few stores here in the area, and they just opened a store this last summer in Carmel. And they're fantastic for the running community at large. They sponsor so many events. They get involved with everything. They've hosted a bunch of Saturday morning club runs for us where they make pancakes and mimosas for the runners. And they're actually producing our merchandise this year. They're getting jackets and quarter zips and shirts made and all that kind of stuff to sell to runners. And, I would always prefer to work with a local shop like that. I think the big guys don't need our support. We're not the size of a Chicago, New York, Boston, where we're going to really put anybody on the map on a national level. So if we can support those local companies, the local stores, we're working with a local beer sponsor for our post-race beer this year, a brewery like 5 miles from our start-finish line.
Who is that?
Beer Brewery, BIER.
Okay.
They
I've heard them.
Yeah, that's really good. I actually just I met with Todd, the previous race director, a couple of days ago, just to pick his brain on some stuff, and we met there. It's a great spot. It's actually our 10K course runs within, probably a quarter mile of there. It's up near Clay Terrace in Carmel. Really cool spot. So when you're in town, definitely worth hitting up.
Definitely will. I thought you were going to say Sun King for a second, so I got a little excited. But I'm always up for trying new beers.
Sun King's great too. Yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong. There's so many. This is another example of Indy and this whole area flying under the radar. Like, there's so many good little breweries here in Sun King, in the Indy area. And actually, Jacob, Sun King just opened up a spot down in Sarasota. I know that's a few hours from you, but if you're ever in that area, it's worth going over. Their beer is really good.
Ironically, I'm the weird guy that doesn't drink alcohol for no
coffee.
particular reason.
Or coffee.
Or coffee. I've never even tasted coffee before.
No, you're the smart one. It's best just to stay away from it altogether.
Yeah, but I don't. It's not like I have a healthy replacement. I drink energy drinks, and here I am drinking a Gatorade fast twitch drink.
So what about the? I'm gonna mix in some. I want to know what's going to be going on race day. Obviously, what about the fuel for the race? What are we going to be munching down on the course or drinking as far as electrolytes and whatnot?
So we do water and we do lemon lime Gatorade, and we actually have intentionally stayed away from gels on course. The event has had gels and chews and stuff like that on course, and I think what we found is that everyone has their own preference, right? And you train with power gel or whatever it might be, and you get used to that, and then you get out on course and you have something totally different. I would never, as a runner, I would never do that, and I would never recommend that to another runner. And so, we had actually a couple of conversations with sponsors, gel sponsors, about bringing stuff onto course, and it didn't make sense for us this year because those conversations happened a little bit late, and I didn't want to introduce something and make people feel like they had to start training with that 6 weeks out or 2 months out and throw the whole training for a loop. So we provide hydration, water, Gatorade, and then any nutrition that you want or need is on you. Now, we do provide for elite athletes, there's an additional elite aid station that they can put whatever they want there, and they can swing by and grab it. So they'll have their own nutrition that they don't have to carry. But everyone else, we sort of encourage to carry the solid nutrition that you need.
No, that's great. Actually, I fully support that. Yeah.
And you just partially answered my question. Going back to the elite athletes, does this race in particular, do they do anything different for the elite athletes, whether it comes to the expo itself or packet pickup or hotel accommodations, anything along those lines?
Yeah, it's a good question. So any elite athlete, and we have standards that you have to show proof of, finish time under those standards to qualify for either the half or the full. They all get free entries. So you don't pay for your entry. We don't cover travel or accommodations just because it gets really kind of messy. People commit to the race 6 months out, and then they end up changing their mind. Their training plan changes, they get hurt or something else, and then we're sort of stuck with hotel rooms and travel accommodations. And so we give free entries, and we do a prize purse. So we'll give, I think it's a total of about $10,000 across all 3 races, both genders. And then we do on race day, we have an elite lounge. So because it's April, the weather could be a little cool that morning. So we're really fortunate to have a strong partner, Pedcor, which is a property management company. Their building is right next to our start finish line. And they're gracious enough to let us use their sort of lobby and a conference room. So the elites have a place to kind of hang out inside, stay warm. We put food and drinks in there for them. They've got dedicated restrooms. And then, of course, on the start line, they get their own sort of separation where they've got extra space to warm up on the start line. And we kind of give a buffer between the elites and the rest of the pack. So, we try to make it a good enough experience where it's worth their time to come to our race without kind of separating them from the rest of the runners so much that it feels like we're giving them preferential treatment and we don't care about the other runners, right? We try to treat everybody, like it's an important race to them, like they're trying to qualify for Boston or trying to PR or something like that.
No, I'm looking at the prize purse information actually right now. Jay, I don't see a Masters prize purse. Come on, I'm a Masters runner.
That's an interesting thought. We've discussed this year. We didn't add it for this year, but we talked about adding an additional. We do course record bonuses as well.
I saw that. Yeah,
we talked about adding, the top finisher from Indiana gets a bonus or something like that, right? Masters is another category that wasn't really on my radar, but we should consider that for next year. That's a good call out.
I say it again, being a Florida resident. I mean, Masters running there's more Master runners here than anything. So
I'm sure.
I was looking back at my results from 2021, and I got 20th overall. Does that qualify for any prize purse? It's a pretty good race, but I don't think it's quite elite.
That's a great race, but we don't roll down quite that far. Not yet. But the elite field is something that we've also talked about expanding a little bit, whether that means, increasing that prize purse, either more money for the winners or just rolling it down further to the top 10, top 20, something like that. Ultimately it's a peek behind the curtain, into the brain of a race director. It's a balancing act for us because it's a business, right? We need to sort of make money on the things that we do. We support the community in so many ways. We'll give over $15,000, between $15,000 and $20 to charities this year in our area, but we also have to make money on this. And so increasing the prize purse and, it doesn't bring in more age groupers because 99% of people, they're not going to a race for the prize purse. So it's a balancing act between that. Are we going to get a return on that investment? And then sometimes the answer is no, but it's good for the community, but it's good for the elite runners and it fosters, competitive running in our area. So it's one of those things that we've talked about doing. We didn't do for this year, but it's pretty close to the top of our list to sort of increase that prize purse and probably roll it down further to more runners, just to help support. I mean, you guys know this as Chase, an elite runner, it's hard to make any money in the sport. And for so many runners who are sort of fringe pro, where they're working on the job on the side, but they're trying to make a go at this and qualify for the trials or land a sponsorship deal or something like that. A little bit of prize money at these races can go a long way for those athletes. So it's something that we're aware of and we would love to grow in the future.
Hey, Carolyn, we're going to need you to get a hold of Connor Mance and see if you can't bring up the Carmel. All right.
He's busy that weekend, y'all.
Is he? Oh.
Yeah.
He's
Is he
probably
in Boston?
doing.
I don't
Probably.
think
He's
he's
not
doing
Boston.
the New York half with you, Carolyn. I think he'll be there.
We're going to be busy. Sorry. It's less than a month, you know.
Yeah, the New York half is it's coming up, right?
It is coming up, yeah.
A week and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Awesome.
So
Have you had any? I mean, I know this is your first year as the director, but has this race seen any of the bigger elite names, the Nike runners, or just the Olympic level athletes? Has it brought any of them?
No, I mean, if you look at, again, our prize purse is not enough to cover somebody like that. Like, you're not going to race a ton of marathons in a calendar year, right? You're not going to do 10 races. And so if you're going to only do a couple of races, you're going to pick and choose the ones where you have the best chances to get, number one, the most exposure, and number two, the best payout. We don't provide that exposure like Boston, Chicago, New York, right? Like we just, LA, we don't get the news coverage on a national scale that those races do. So we don't provide the visibility to those runners that a much larger race would. And then obviously our prize purse is significantly lower. So we had our course marathon record was set last year, and the winner went 2:18:03, I think it was. So we came very, very close to having an Olympic trials qualifier. But in terms of the sort of household names, the top 5-10 athletes in the country, we're a little too small for those athletes.
I have a random question. Well, first off, did you watch the Olympic trials this year?
I did. Well, part of it. I was actually. I mean, this is a sore spot if you can't tell. This is a sore subject. I was in Orlando. Running USA hosts a conference every year for race directors and the industry as a whole. And it was in Orlando this year around the Olympic trials. So the conference was, like Wednesday through Friday or something like that. And the trials were on Saturday. And our flight, we had to come home for a family thing. And so I was in the air during the trial. So I'm like at the airport watching it on my phone. And then we take off and I lost it for a little while. And then as soon as I got Wi-Fi on the plane, I'm like looking at live updates. So I watched part of it. And then of course, once I got home, I watched the replay. But it was killing me. I was sitting on that airplane, like just wondering what was going on and not able to watch it.
So here's my fun question. Okay. You saw the end of the race, right? You saw the finish.
Mm-hmm.
For the men.
Yeah.
Who really won that race, in your opinion?
So here's the thing. I appreciate the way those guys handled it. I don't think my answer to that is it doesn't matter. I think they both won. They both knew they were going to the Olympics at that point. Their teammates, their training partners. I don't know that it matters, like who you give first place to and who you give second place to. I know it's not the answer. People like if you want people to pick a side, but
maybe I think it's hard because, to someone like me, $30,000 is a lot of money. So,
absolutely. And now I will say, I don't know. I haven't heard the inside story. Maybe those guys went in with the agreement of like, if this happens, we're going to split the prize money. And I've heard of teammates doing that before. So it doesn't become a bloodbath the last mile. Like if we can coast and go 1-2 in this thing, then we'll split the money no matter how, either way. So maybe they had an arrangement like that. I don't know. But you're right. For most people, the money makes a significant difference.
Yep.
I think based off what we know about those two guys and the stories that they told throughout, not just the trials, but the lead up to the trials, I don't think it really, like you said, they both came out winners in my opinion. So
totally. Yeah, I don't think there's any bad blood there. I think they'll be okay.
I mean, both of them are just incredible, not just incredible runners, but incredible human beings, and really wish them all the luck at the Olympics. But yeah, that was just a very inspiring thing to watch and a good thing. I think, when in a world where, some of our role models aren't necessarily, especially athletes, can stick their foot in their mouth a lot, to see something like that was just very good.
Yeah, it's so good for the sport. We're lucky to be in the sport that we are, that you don't see that very often, right? With the hotheads in the NFL and the NBA and some other sports. By and large, these professional runners are great role models. So you can't, it's hard to complain about that kind of stuff.
Love it. Good answer. My wallet would have been
Right.
pushing for that first place
Right.
finish.
Right.
I
Okay,
do
Jay,
want to go ahead, Carolyn. Go ahead.
my question's kind of long. But Jay, so I've never gotten to pick the brain of a race director. So
Mhm.
walk us through what happens on race day. Like, where are you? What time do you wake up? What's the plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. Whew. So, what time do I wake up? That depends on whether or not I go to sleep the night before. Sometimes you wake up Friday morning, and that's you just up. Um, we do a lot of work. We go first thing Friday morning. Let's start with Friday, the day of the expo. Those first few hours, we're there setting up, getting the expo ready to go, getting that kicked off. Um, Katie, my wife, is sort of owning the expo. She's in charge of the expo this year. So once that's set up and running, she's in charge. And then I'm gone the rest of the day. And I'm over at the finish line, setting up tents, tables, getting the portalets where they need to be, building out our start finish structure. So the goal is to set up as much as we possibly can on Friday during the day so that we can all go to bed at a reasonable hour, get up, at the latest, it's going to be 4 o'clock on Saturday morning that you're getting up. Um, we're fortunate that we have a partner hotel right next to the start finish line. So literally we wake up and walk out the door and we're there. Um, and then from there, but I say that, but it just sort of depends on the weather too. There are years where it's pouring down rain and we just can't set certain things up on Friday. We have to wait for the weather to clear, or it's really windy, and so we can't set up that start finish structure because we're afraid the wind may blow it over or blow some of the tents down. And so in those years, you sort of just have to wait for night to fall and the winds to die down, and then you're out there at midnight to 4 a.m. setting up tents and structures and stuff like that. So it just depends. Best case scenario, we do our jobs and we're in bed 9-10 o'clock Friday, and then we're up at 4 just to make sure everything's still good and all that. And then, for me, my day is spent right there at the start finish line. Our start finish line are in the same location, which makes things way easier. We're not a point to point race. And so, there's so many things that happen. We have 5 races going on at the same time. So we have a 5K and 10K that start at 8 o'clock. And then at 8:10, the half marathon, the marathon, and the marathon relay all start. And so we have runners, based on the number of runners, we'll have runners still starting and going through the start line for the marathon and the half, while we have 5K finishers already coming through and finishing. And so we have finishers from, call it 8:15 in the morning all the way up until 2:45, almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon, constant stream of people finishing. And so it's, on that day, if you've done your preparation well, it shouldn't be chaotic. It's more of just making sure we've got enough water where we need it, Gatorade where we need it, athlete food. On the medical front, the medical team has what they need and they're well supported. It's really just sort of keeping an eye on everything and making sure that things go to plan, right? Which is not always the case. Sometimes we have severe weather and the wind comes up and we have to take down a bunch of soft fencing or take down banners, or take down tents. So there's always just sort of, triage that has to happen. But for the most part, to me, that's game day, right? That's the fun. This is like you train all year for this race or this game, and then like that, the race to me, when you toe that start line and you actually show up and run, like that's the reward for all the training that you did, and it's no different for us, right? That day is so rewarding to see people finish and accomplish their goals and hug the random stranger volunteer who gives them their finisher medal and their happy tears. And it's just like that whole atmosphere, you don't get that anywhere else in any other sport. So I selfishly try to spend as much time as possible around the finish line just so I can soak in all that energy. But yeah, that's you try to enjoy it as much as you can, but it's always, at the end of the day, it's, you sort of feel this responsibility. We're going to have about 6,000 people out there this year. And so that's a lot of people to be responsible for, right? Now we have a fantastic team. The city supports us with police, fire, EMS. Franciscan Health is our title sponsor, and they provide medical support. So it never just falls on one person, but there's always that weight of like, I am responsible for these people and making sure that they have a good experience and that they're safe and everything goes the way we told them it would go, you know? So there's a little bit of that throughout the day as well, just making sure that everything's going to plan. And then you sneak away and just try to enjoy the finish line for a few minutes here and there when you can.
You know, Chase, I'm going to bring up a story here. So keep me honest on my story because it involves you. But Chase had a semi-negative experience with the marathon, Grandma's marathon, where he ended up not being able to run it, due to injury, but he still made it a point to get up there and he'd check out the expo and he wanted to get his stuff. And correct me if I'm wrong, Chase, they ended up not allowing you to get your shirt or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's correct. So because
what's your
the T-shirt said finisher on them. Yeah, that's so they didn't give it to me because I didn't actually run the race.
But he paid for it. So here's my question. I'm sorry, I don't want to. My question is like, as a race director, what's your thought behind situations like that? Where people last minute can't do the race, like you talked about with the elites, but they still go. Like, do they get their stuff? Do they get what they paid for, even if they can't run the race, etc.?
Yes, they do. And this is part of the reason that most races don't print finisher on the shirts anymore, and it's for that exact reason, right? Now, a lot of runners wouldn't want that shirt, right? They don't. We had a few people last year who, there's 6,000 people. You're going to get the wrong shirt, right? So it's going to happen at some point. You get a marathon shirt when you sign up for the 10K. Mistakes happen. Volunteers hand you the wrong shirt. And we had people come back like, I can't wear this shirt. I didn't run the marathon, right? And so a lot of people wouldn't want to wear a finisher shirt anyway. But that's the biggest reason that we don't print that kind of stuff on the shirt. So in my mind, if you show up, you get your shirt, you get your packet, you get all that stuff. You can enjoy the expo. And we also try to be flexible. We allow deferrals. So the money that you paid for this year, you can defer to the following year. You can also switch to a different distance. So we have a ton of people who sign up for the marathon. Life happens. You don't get the training in that you thought, or maybe you get injured or something happens. You're like, I'm not ready for this. Can I do the half instead? Can I do the 10K instead? So we allow people to downgrade in distance for free at no extra charge. You can transfer your registration to a different person if you want to give it to somebody else. And we allow all that up until literally the day of the expo. So, it does cause things like that, cause a few headaches for us, right? Because Chase paid, he ordered call it medium shirt. And then 2 days before, he's like, hey, I can't run, but I'm going to transfer my registration to Jacob. Fine, no problem. But Jacob's a small, right? Now all of a sudden, so it does cause problems for us. And we do order extra shirts for things like that. And ultimately, to me, at the end of the day, it's all in service of what I said earlier, which is the runner experience, right? Did you have a good experience? And if you ask somebody, you've all run who knows how many races, how was it, right? That was the question when you get back, how was it? And generally speaking, the first answer that comes to mind is, great, I ran really well. Or, it sucked, I ran horribly, I hit the wall. And then the second thing is, but the race was awesome. The post-race food was great. The shirts are really cool. The medals are awesome. And so all of that, the whole weekend, contributes to how you felt about the event. And so even if you're injured or something came up and you're not able to run, I still want you to have a good experience with the Carmel Marathon. And if that means that you didn't run, but we treated you with respect and we treated you with grace and we gave you your shirt anyway, and we made an exception for you in this weird area, something like that, then for me, that's a no-brainer, right? It's worth the few extra dollars on a shirt that we may or may not have wasted. It's worth spending a few minutes, helping somebody out. Like I said, we have people flying from, from all over the country and different. We're up to like 7 or 8 different countries now too. So from all over the world. And so when somebody makes a point to travel to Carmel, Indiana for our event, I feel like we need to roll out the red carpet for them, right? Now, we have to be reasonable because we have 6,000 runners to take care of, but treating people like you would want to be treated if you were running is kind of it's the golden rule for a reason, right? That's our sort of bottom line. So we're runners ourselves. I'm a runner. My wife, our whole team, we're all runners. And so we try to treat people that way, the way we would want to be treated when we show up at a race.
Yeah, for sure.
So speaking of red carpet, what are the chances of me getting a limo service pickup at the airport if I do fly in?
For you, we'll get you a limo. We'll do.
Sold. I'm signing up.
Oh snap! Oh snap!
Limo and then bill you, Chase.
Yeah, we'll just. Your registration fee is going to be $700, but we'll get you a limo.
Hey, no worries. If you could just bill that to Brooks Running, I'm sure they'll cover it.
We're back on that again. No.
It's funny, like the red carpet thing. So I worked for Ironman for years, which I mentioned. If you've been to an Ironman event, you've seen like they have at all their events the red carpet with the big black M dot on it, and they have the most iconic finish lines in the world, right? And so I actually reached out to a few different companies for quotes to get some carpet for Carmel. Like, give me a big blue chunk of carpet with our logo on it. This is going to look awesome. And the quotes came back at like 30 grand. I was like, okay, never mind. It's crazy expensive for that custom printed carpet, at least for the size that we wanted. So, but like those are, in all seriousness, like those are the kinds of things that like what would make the experience just a little bit cooler. So we ended up we got street decals. We're going to put decals on the streets. Not quite as cool as the blue carpet, but right. So like, it's the little things. It's the BQ bell that we talked about earlier. Like, what are the little things that, yes, they cost a little extra money. We're not going to get a return on that investment, right? Nobody's going to pay extra because there's a bell there, but it just makes the experience a little more memorable and a little more fun. So those are the things that we're starting to kind of chip away at and think through, what are those little things that people care about, and how can we sort of surprise and delight people along the way?
Yeah, so I think I can talk to that to a point. Just to take a minute to kind of share my Carmel Marathon experience. We talked earlier about how I ran 2021, and if you think back to 2021, I'm sure you remember, Jay, but I'll go back a year further, right? 2020 and even 2019, I'd actually had my first DNF at the Indianapolis Monumental. So I didn't finish, and I was really beating myself up. I was about to like quit running altogether. I was really that fed up with it. And then 2020 rolled around, circumstances changed. I got back into the race, and of course we all know what happened there in March of 2020. But Carmel Marathon was one of the last ones to call it. Like they were still planning on having it. And I was I was ready to go. I was like, sweet, there's a marathon that's happening right near me. I'm going to get signed up for it. And then you guys pushed it back to, I think, June originally. And I was still all on board. I was 100% on board. And then we finally deferred to the next year. But, then I showed up in 2021. And like you said, the course was fun, flat, fast, and I had a whole year of training under my belt. I was jonesing for a marathon at that point. Like, I was just ready to go. That was my first post-COVID marathon, and I came out and I not only ran my first BQ there, but like my PR to this date, it was a 25-minute PR at the time for me. So it was just, It was a very special day, and to kind of highlight how special it was, I literally broke down in tears. I know that kind of sounds a little wimpy, but my wife was like, "What is wrong?" And I was just like, "This is such an awesome day right there."
Absolutely nothing is wrong. Yeah.
So it was a great experience for me. I had a fantastic experience there.
Yeah, and that's, it's funny. I'm glad you had a good experience, and obviously we didn't manage the event through 2020 and 21, and across the industry there were so many tough decisions made, for those 2 years that, to your point, the race got pushed back because everybody was like, "Oh, it'll be a couple months. This will all blow over. We'll be fine." And then, obviously with hindsight, like none of that happened. But, man, talk about navigating through a storm and just not knowing how long it's going to last. But But your point about you had a great race, you ran a huge PR, and now your lasting memory of that event is that was awesome. Everything about it was awesome, right?
Mhm.
There was probably somebody 20 minutes behind you who ran way slower. They had a horrible day, and the whole weekend was awful. I'm never coming back to Carmel. This is terrible. So part of it just depends on the individual and how well you run that day. And so we try to set people up for success. It's a flat course. It's a fast course. It's well supported with aid stations. We host a course preview run for people to come out and see the course a few weeks before. But ultimately, you gotta run the race, right? So, but yeah, I'm glad to hear you had a good experience with it. It's good to hear, and we're gonna try to improve on that this year if we can.
I'm looking forward to it.
So if you don't run a PR, we're not inviting you back after this year. That's what I'm saying.
That's fair. If I don't run a PR, then I might not even show up to Chicago. Who knows? No, I got to show up. The Chicago Marathon is going to be the first time that all three of us will meet in person. So we're
that's
we're
cool.
planning a special time
Awesome.
there.
That's awesome.
We tried to all meet in Indianapolis, but one of the three of us really didn't want any part of it. So the other two, though, we showed up. Team players and all that.
That one hurt. I tried. That one hurt.
You can redeem yourselves, Carolyn. I guess you can redeem yourself. 2025 Carmel Marathon.
I'm in. I'm not doing anything that I know of.
Well, unless you qualify for Boston, Carolyn, then you're probably. I don't know if Carmel is going to be on your radar if you're running Boston.
Yeah, just don't qualify for Boston.
Well, even
Carmel's
if she
way more fun than Boston.
2026 Carmel Marathon.
Or you could treat Carmel as your long run if it's the week before Boston.
Yeah, we don't have a date locked in yet for 2025, but it's going to be, if not Boston weekend, it'll be within a week or two of it. So I would not recommend running 2 marathons within a couple weeks.
Okay, no more. I won't pick on you anymore tonight, Carolyn. I promise.
Yeah,
It's fine. Everything's fine.
I've been taking the Brooks bashing easy. I've been enjoying my Brooks Maxes. I'm liking them. And Josh Kerr just won another world championship, so I think that Brooks has got some bragging rights right now.
Thank you.
I have to dial back, Jay. If you didn't know, Chase didn't tell you. I've been very public about my hatred towards Brooks products, and and then I found out just a couple weeks ago that the team I race for is now being sponsored by Brooks. So
you got to figure out how to mend your fences and make it work, right?
Gotta dial back a little bit. Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. I ran in Brooks for years and years. I ran in the Ravenna from the very first edition of that shoe when it first came out in like 2008 or 9. 2012-ish. Ran in the Ravenna for, I don't know, 10 years.
I had that
after
one
that.
too, yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah.
Are we able? I don't know if you have something within arm's reach there, Jay, but do you have a medal reveal for the Carmel?
I meant to pull them out. Hold on. I think they're. Let me see. Yes. Stand by. I got them here somewhere. Let's see. They are also on. They're on social media. Oh, here we go. So this is the marathon medal.
Nice.
So it's a big. Sorry, It's kind of reflecting off my light. It's a big medal, 4.5 inch blank.
Holy cow! Look at that.
The light blue and dark blue stripes have glitter in them. We've heard from runners that some of their favorite medals are glittery, so we went with glitter. And then the half marathon. So same design, a little bit smaller. It says half marathon, of course, instead of marathon. And then the 10K and 5K are similar. They just, a little smaller still. So our 10K there. The cool thing, one of my favorite things about these medals is that these were actually designed by students at Carmel High School, the local high school. So I went to
very cool.
one of the art teachers there. He teaches a graphic design class, and I was like, look, I will I think this would be great real world experience for your students. They designed our shirts and our medals.
That's awesome.
The shirt has a very similar design. It's like the shape of Indiana with the skyline of Carmel and the runners. And the agreement was I'll make a donation to your class. You can buy supplies, do whatever you want with it. I can either go pay a graphic designer, or I could pay some students, and they get experience out of it, and it's a learning experience for them. So it was really cool. I went in a couple of different times and talked to the class, kind of gave them a brief on, here's what we're looking for, here's what I like, what I don't like, and here's some elements I want to make sure we need the date, we need the distance, right? Certain things that we have to include. Otherwise, go nuts. And we kind of got 4 or 5 designs back that I was like, I really like this element of this one and that element of that one. So we kind of combined everything, and that group got together and made a sort of super design out of all of them combined. And so it was really cool. It's a good way to kind of support the school a little bit, get some. We're really happy with how they turned out, and I think the runners are going to love them. So
that's actually really cool.
Great. That is great.
And we also, I don't know if you noticed, the ribbons are all different colors, and that was very, very intentional because our bibs are also color coded. So the marathon is blue, the half is red, the 10K is black or dark gray, and then the 5K is white. And this is something that, like Carolyn, to your point, like if you're not in the brain of a race director, you may not think about that kind of stuff. Like, why wouldn't they all just be blue and red? But when you have volunteers at the finish line and you have 10K, half marathon, marathoners all finishing at the same time, the volunteer doesn't know who, you can't tell by looking at someone. So we tried to make the bibs as obvious as possible. They're all different colors, and the ribbons on the medals match the color of the bib. So you see a blue bib, hand them a blue medal. Red bib, hand them a red medal. So there's a little bit of strategy that goes into that kind of stuff too, just that makes our lives easier on race day. And part of the reason we chose the colors that we did is because some of our title sponsors have those colors in their logos. So like the 10K title sponsor is black and blue, so they got a black ribbon. And so we tried to make it work that way as well.
We talked about some of them already, Jay, but what other kind of major local sponsors do you got, or are we working with here that maybe I might know of and maybe these guys don't?
Yeah, so Athletic Annex is our local running store. Franciscan Health is one of the bigger sort of healthcare groups in central Indiana. They're the title sponsor of our marathon, and they also provide all the medical staff for us. So on race day, when you see the medical tent at the finish line, you'll see medical tents on the course. So we provide, I think I've never seen a race with as many medical tents per runner that we have. Like almost every mile marker on the marathon course, every aid station has a medical tent along with it that is staffed with doctors and medical professionals. We have doctors out on the course on bikes. So Franciscan puts, I think it's about a dozen doctors on bicycles with packs on their back to be able to treat just about anything that would happen along, and they're just roaming on bikes covering the entire course. And so we're so lucky to have them as a partner because that service is so invaluable to us. Just the peace of mind that we know that our runners are going to be safe. And if something does happen, someone does get injured, they're going to have the best possible care, as quickly as you could hope for. And then we have a 10K sponsor, which is Indiana Spine Group, which you've probably heard of if you've spent time in the Indy area. One of the really cool things that I haven't mentioned, and I should have, one of the best things about our race is the pancake breakfast. So you finish a race, you get a granola bar, banana, Gatorade, room temp water. We actually do a hot breakfast for our runners, 5K through marathon. Every finisher gets access to it, and it's pancakes and sausage. And the Indiana Spine Group sponsors that, and they bring some of their doctors and nurses out, and they cook for the runners, which is awesome. They bring out these big industrial griddles, and they serve the runners, which it's so, like, to get real food after you finish a race like that is so much better than the banana, you guys know, right? And so that's a really cool service that they provide as well, and the runners absolutely love that. And then our 5K title sponsor is Indiana Members Credit Union, which they're another one that they do so much for us beyond just the normal sponsorship stuff. They let us host volunteer meetings in their facilities, in their conference room, in one of their banks. They provide marketing support for us. So We're really fortunate, and then we work with Athletico as well for physical therapy. So they actually come out and they provide stretching services to the runners. So after you finish, you can get stretching and light massage and things like that. So we try to work with companies that provide a benefit and bolster the runner experience, right? So every sponsor that I mentioned, like, they're a financial supporter of the event, but I would say more importantly, they make the experience better, right? They're making food for the runners, or they're providing medical care for the runners, or something that improves the runner experience, which is really important to us because, again, at the end of the day, we're here for the athletes, and so if they don't have a good experience, then none of us are going to be here very long, right? It's not going to stick around. So that's always our goal when we bring on a new sponsor.
I would hate to be the doctor on the bike that drew the short straw and has to keep up with that 218 marathoner.
So those guys, we do provide cycle like a bike escort for the elite runners. So if somebody does have to keep up with the 26.2 miles with the elite marathoners and the half marathoners, the doctors they get kind of a zone. So you might have a 2 mile zone and you just kind of patrol up and back. So they're not necessarily following a specific runner, but we do have bike escorts who are tasked with just sort of guiding the first few runners through the course and making sure it's clear for them and all that kind of stuff. And that's not an easy job.
No, you talked about just a second ago, you were talking about, how you want to cater to the runners as much as possible, and not just the race, but, the after party, the before party, the expo, all that stuff. Is there an aspect of race directing where you go beyond just catering to the runners and you look to cater to the people that are supporting the runners, the wives and the spouses and does that play into your planning at all as well? Who are they bringing with them?
That's a great question. Yeah. So it's a tough day for people out watching a marathon. You're either freezing cold, you're getting rained on, you're burning up and it's hot, and you've got little kids who are bored out of their minds and just want to go play, right? So that's a tough day. Us runners get to go just enjoy our course for a few hours. So we make certain benefits available to them as well. So food, drinks, things like that, they can always use. Obviously the facilities. We've talked about doing a sort of VIP area for spectators where they would have a place to kind of hang out indoors if the weather's not great, get closer to the finish line to watch their friend or family member finish. We intentionally didn't do that this year just because with our first year managing the event, we sort of, let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's make sure we can execute on this race and make the best experience we can for the runners. And then I think next year we'll focus on some of the other stuff like the volunteers and the spectators. Our volunteers, obviously, we try to treat the best we can because if the event doesn't happen, we'll use almost 500 volunteers on race day, and the event simply does not happen without them. Every aid station is staffed with 10 to 20 volunteers. You'll get your medal from a volunteer. You'll get your water and your food from a volunteer. They do everything. You'll pick up your packet from a volunteer at the expo. And so we make sure they all get a shirt. Actually, these are the volunteer shirts for this year. We just got them, so I had to slip one on to make sure it fits. They get a shirt. They get food and drinks everywhere they go. So at the expo, we bring in food for them on race day. We bring in donuts and coffee in the morning, and then we'll bring in lunch. Last year we did Chick-fil-A, so we'll bring in lunch for them. I mean, and we also give, a large part of our charitable contributions go to those groups. So if you bring a lot of our aid stations are staffed by groups, local churches, high school clubs, local sororities, things like that. And we donate to those groups as well. So if you bring 10 or more volunteers, we write a check to the nonprofit of your choice. So there is some financial incentive as well. And, I think most of them, they probably don't do it for the money. They do it because they're good people and they're good organizations and they want to support the community. But we kind of figure it's the least we can do. And credit to Todd and CRRG events, because they've been doing that for years. They've been giving back to local groups like that in exchange for volunteer services.
No, I have I'm sorry. I feel like I have all the questions, guys.
Go for it, Jake.
So this is a question I've seen. It's come up on social media. I've seen it in Facebook running groups and on TikTok. And it might be an uncomfortable question. So if we can't answer, we can't answer. But I see it a lot. Is race directing a full time? Is that your full time job? I guess.
That's a great question, and actually, I get that question a lot. So, for most, it depends on the size of the event, the number of events that you have. For most race directors, the answer is yes. For me, the answer is not yet. Right. So, without indulging financial information, we just acquired the event from the group who started it. And so financially, we're sort of paying that off, so to speak. Yep. Now, I will also say you're not going to see anybody buying a yacht with the money that they made from race directing, unless it's Chicago, New York, Boston, like those races. And obviously, they donate a ton to charity. We're not making millions of dollars. We're not making $1 million or anywhere near that from a race like this, right? And so, a lot of race directors, this is their living, and it does feel like a full-time job most of the time, right? For me, this is not something that would be sustainable if I wasn't passionate about the space and about running and the running community in our area. It doesn't feel like work, so I have no problem working right now my 9 to 5, and then I have 2 little kids, so putting them to study that's what my day looks like for right now.
All right, we are back, and if things look a little bit different, it's because they are. We ran into some technical difficulties the other night when we originally recorded, which happens from time to time. We've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and being the fact that we're in different locations, stuff like this just happens. So anyway, Jay is back with us. Yep. We recorded most of the podcasts, but we did miss one really key thing that I wanted to make sure that we got included, and I wanted it to come from you, Jay, because we really wanted to touch on and still get into the Carmel Marathon and what the availability is for each individual race.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So carmelmarathon.com is our website. That's the best place to go and see kind of what's still open, what's sold out. So the full marathon is sold out. We're currently on a waiting list. Right now, we're seeing equal number of people join the waiting list and drop out each day. So the way this works essentially is if you sign up for the marathon and life happens, injuries happen, and you decide you want to drop down to the half marathon or the 10K, or you want to defer your registration to the next year, or you want to transfer your registration to another person, those are all options that we allow runners to do. And when someone drops out of the marathon, then whoever's at the front of the wait list gets a spot. And that person they'll get a link in their email. They have 48 hours to register before it moves on to the next person. And so we're seeing it move pretty quickly. This is about the time, we're about a month out when people start to have second thoughts about running a marathon, and they think, maybe I'll just run the half and then tackle a marathon in the fall or later in the year. And so there is still time, and I would encourage people, at least for the next couple of weeks. I think if you join the waitlist, you will probably get in. Beyond that, I would say it's doubtful. But then aside from that, the half, 10K, 5K, all still have plenty of room. The half marathon might sell out, but if it does, it will probably be like race week, so pretty last minute. So don't count on signing up at the expo. There will be no race day registration, so your absolute last chance to sign up would be on Friday, April 12th at the expo. And the half and the full will probably both be gone by then. So it'll just be 5K, 10K. So there's still time, but don't wait. We're a month out at this point. So it's go time.
Right on. Well, Jake, Carolyn, since the first time we recorded this, is there any updates? Are you guys going to be able to make it to Carmel or what?
No.
I have plans, okay? But in 2025, at least next year, I want to go ahead and try and make it up there. So
awesome.
Yeah.
That would be great. Well, we'll save you a spot on the start line.
Please do. Yeah.
I was just out on the course today, just fine tuning and finalizing all of our aid station, our water stop plans. We work off of city fire hydrants, so we've got to run a hose from the nearest hydrant to our water table. So just figuring out I think I mentioned this when we talked earlier in the conversation, but we have an increased number of runners, and that means more water, more Gatorade, more tables, more volunteers, more everything. So I spent all day out on the course today, just and it's beautiful. It's looking great. The roads are nice and smooth. The weather is starting to finally warm up here in the Midwest, and it's going to be beautiful. So we're really excited.
Can I just say this is going to sound like the weirdest thing, but here in Florida and then up in New York, so the last two places I lived, the the idea of using city water is not an option.
Yeah, so that's a fair point, actually. So we've the event has gone through a few changes because of the taste of the water. Fortunately, in this area, it's not bad. We actually use so the city goes through the week before our race and puts these little converters on them so that you can hook up a regular garden hose. And then we go through and we use like an RV water filter. So it's the same kind of filter you'd use in like in an RV or a camper.
Okay.
And it filters all that stuff out. So it tastes literally like bottled water because of those filters. And it's funny with talking about those. I just went through and inventoried some stuff today as well, and we're a few short. So some of those walked off last year. So I've just ordered a few more. So we'll have brand new filters out there. But yeah, that is a legitimate concern, right? You can't just, depending on where you are, you can't just hook up a hose and drink the water. You could, but it doesn't taste the best. So fortunately, our water is pretty solid. And then with those filters, you would never know that it was tap water. Valid concern, though.
Yeah, well, because I mean, again, in Florida, I don't know if you remember, Chase, from your time here at all, but they have these water filtration like systems. All like you can just every couple of miles you can go on a run and you'll pass a water filtration unit, and it smells awful, right? It smells like sewage every time you pass it because it's getting all the junk out of the water. So they say our water is good to drink. I don't know. I'm weird about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, you think about an event at scale like that, it would be nearly impossible for us to use bottled water or even gallon jugs, right? Or I guess you could go with like the big 5-gallon jugs, but even that we would probably need a couple thousand of them. Like it just becomes unrealistic. So we have gone through the iteration of buying those filters and actually a couple different types of filters just to find out which one does the best job. And now it's fine. We scrub our I have in my garage right now at home about 80 water Gatorade coolers because they just sit all year. And so we clean them. So here in the next couple of weeks, I'll go through and we'll scrub them and clean them and make sure they're spotless. And then, with the filters, it's about as good as you could hope for. So
nice.
So this is random, but okay. So I have a friend who used to be a race director, and she would track her steps and her miles on race day. And she, like one of her, like was a half marathon, and she walked 10 miles. So do you plan on like tracking your steps, or I'm kind of interested to see the mileage on race day for you?
Yeah, I probably will. I have a Garmin that I always wear that tracks steps, and it's I like it because it does that, but it also it's one of the older ones, like the 902 or something like that, maybe. And so I can see text messages and phone calls on it, so I don't have to constantly be pulling my phone out of my pocket. It's perfect. Yeah, I actually didn't last year at the race. I didn't measure, but when I was working at Ironman, we were there. I mean, those races start at 7 a.m., so you're up at 4:30 or 5, and it goes until midnight or 1 a.m. And I would put in between like 14 to 16 miles a day. So I'm sure it's probably similar at Carmel, maybe a little bit less. We're fortunate that like our start finish line are in the same location. Our whole post race village is within a couple blocks basically. So I'm not covering a lot of distance, but yeah, you're on your feet all day, right? And it's one of those things where the adrenaline just carries you, and you get to like 3 p.m. You're like, oh my God, I have eaten nothing but a Cliff Bar, and I have not sat down once today. And you feel, and then you just crash. But in the moment, you don't even realize it because you're just so amped up and there's so much going on. It's one of those, I always tell people like it feels kind of like a long run right? Like after a long run, it's such a satisfying like exhaustion where you just sit and you feel so good, like you're exhausted and your whole body hurts, but it feels so rewarding. And that's how it feels after the race, because you're on your feet all day. You're using muscles you're not used to, like you're bending over and picking stuff up, carrying heavy like sandbags and moving barricades and just doing stuff you're not used to. So it is definitely physically demanding for our whole team. Really, it's a long couple days, but it's, again, you don't even feel it in the moment because it's just, at least for me, I'm having a blast. So you don't notice it until the day's over.
Just real quick, can you repeat what watch you're using? Because one of us has expressed that they plan on switching out of their Garmin into another watch, which I am not in agreement with. So just wondering if you could repeat that for the viewers.
I do have a Garmin. So I've always run with Garmin's, and actually now I'm to the point now where like when I run, a lot of times I don't even wear a watch. I don't even like start a stopwatch. Literally like an old Timex. I just go and I'll run for a little while, and when I'm tired of running, I'll turn around and come home. And that for me has become, I don't race that much anymore. I'm not as competitive as I used to be. So if I'm not like training for something, I found that it actually, running is a little more enjoyable. When I don't know what pace I'm going at, I don't care. I don't know how far I went. I don't care. There was a time when I was totally type A about tracking mileage and pace, and I would document every single little thing. That was just my personality. I had to, right? But at some point, I kind of got past that. And so I'll wear it sometimes now, but a lot of times I don't even run with a watch anymore.
Dude, I don't know what to tell you, Jake. Like, I had an Apple Watch for like 7 years. First 7 years that an Apple Watch existed. I finally switched to the Garmin, and I'm just not. I miss my Apple Watch, but I love the fact that I have buttons on the Garmin. So that's the biggest downside to the Apple Watch, is it's so dependent on a touch screen. But no, I'm just not impressed with Garmin, so I'm probably gonna try Coros next.
Interesting. Now, yeah, to be fair, I have not tried any other GPS watches. I got a free Garmin. It was like a 210, I think. It was just like the very basic Garmin. It just did like pace and distance. And I got it for free as a kind of like a promo gift. And then after that, I bought another Garmin and then another one. And so I just never, like, once you get comfortable with a brand, you just kind of stick with it. And that's been my story. So I can't compare it to other options.
Right. And I'm just like an Apple guy. So like, I love the seamless iteration of everything. So that's why I really miss my Apple Watch the most, is because I could just, without skipping a beat, I could just control anything in my house from my Apple Watch, and it was fantastic.
See, I'm very low tech. I'm almost anti-tech. Like, I don't even own an Apple Watch because I don't want on my wrist texts and phone calls and Slack messages and emails. Like, I don't want it. I just, there are certain times of the day, like after work for a few hours when our girls are home from school and before bedtime, like I put my phone down and I won't look at it for 3 hours. And if I had a phone on my wrist like that, I feel like I would just get sucked right back in. So but yeah, I mean, I get it. My wife has one. She loves it. She uses it constantly. And it does make life easier, but I'm just like, I'm putting it off as long as I can.
Same thing.
I would still have a flip phone, I think, if I could.
Yeah, I'm not in a hurry to buy a new GPS watch. I don't know when I'll get a new one. I'm just saying, like, when I do, I want to try something different.
Totally.
Well, before we get going on a whole nother episode, maybe we should go ahead and sign off like we already did one time. Carolyn, do you want to give everybody the rundown on our social?
Yes. You can follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, which we're working on, or YouTube at RunTok Live. You can join our Facebook group at RunTok Live. You can, what else do we have? Instagram. You can follow us at RunTok Live. And then you can find me on TikTok at Carolyn McDuff, and then Instagram at Carolyn M. Levinway.
Still getting used to that married name, aren't you?
It's weird, man. And I've been like 9 months. We've been married 9 months already, which is crazy. And I'm still like slowly getting my, government cards changed. So
I don't think my wife started the name changing process until like a year in, but
the signature was weird for my wife when she went to sign her name. That was because for how many years of your life you write your name the same way, and all of a sudden it's so.
Yeah,
you get a pass on that one.
Thanks, appreciate it. But yeah, I saw my taxes and I was like, how do I what last name do I put? So.
All right, Jake, what about you?
You can find me at garminisnumber1.com. You can also find me at Boot or Brooks. And no, I'm just joking. A cultural runner, all platforms. Go Team Garmin. And yeah, come look me up, guys.
All right, and I'm Chase Adams, aka Chaser No Pacer, pretty much on every platform that's out there in some form or another. Maybe less active on some than others, but this has been another episode of RunTok Live. Any final thoughts on the Carmel Marathon, Jay?
No, thanks for having me, guys. This has been fun. I love listening to the show, and I'm excited for people to get to listen to this one finally. Now that it's a two-parter.
Right.
So
yeah.
For anyone coming to Carmel, looking forward to seeing you next month. And don't hesitate to reach out. My email address is jay@carmelmarathon.com. So if you have questions, thoughts, ideas for the race, I love that kind of stuff. Bouncing ideas off of runners and talking about what makes races cool. Cool stuff you've seen at other marathons. So feel free to reach out anytime. We're here for it.
All right. Awesome. Thank you very much. This has been another episode of RunTok Live, y'all. Deuces.
Peace out.